We are live.
Good morning.
Ryan.
Welcome everyone to the meeting, and I ask that the Assistant Secretary please call the roll.
Thank you. Chair Ryan.
Present.
Regent Balducci.
Here.
Regent Bloom.
Here.
Regent Gray Kemp. Absence is noted. Regent Howery.
Present.
Regent James. Absence is noted. Regent McCarthy.
Present.
Regent Porth.
Present.
Regent Santiago.
Present.
Regent Wright. Absence is noted. Regent Stewart.
Here.
Student Regent Grant.
I'm here.
Thank you. Student Regent Sanchez. Reese. I see there he is here. Professor and our ex officios, Professor Blitz,
Present.
Professor Sasanker,
I'm here.
Commissioner Bartolomeo. Absence is noted. Commissioner Gittani. Absence is noted. Commissioner Dom. Absence is noted. Commissioner Russell Tucker. Absence is noted. Chief Workforce Officer Valeries. Absence is noted. I see that Regent James has joined us. Regent James, present?
Present. I just
Thank
can't get my
you.
video to work.
Thank you. And just to record, are the presidents joining us today? President Maduco. Absence is noted. President Nunez. Absence is noted. President Bertolino.
Present.
President Toro. Absence is noted. President Barron.
President Toro is here.
Okay,
President Toro is
thank
here.
you. President Barron. I see him.
Here.
Thank you. And President Klonowski. Absence is noted. Chair Ryan, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I have been notified that there will be no need for an executive session, so I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda and remove item 13.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The item has been removed. I would like to call for a motion now to adopt the amended agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. The amended agenda is adopted. Again, welcome to the first board meeting of the spring 2023 semester. Though we have all been very busy with Board of Regents committees, we have not been together as a full board since before Christmas. As you can see from our virtual format, we planned for inclement weather in February, which Mother Nature has not provided. So we welcome all of you who are joining us remotely. We have much work ahead of us in 2023, challenging and fulfilling work. Thank you in advance for our faculty, staff, and students for your hard work. And thank you to all the campuses for sending the Regents the calendar of upcoming events and celebrations. We do look forward to visiting your campuses very soon. And on a personal side note, I must recognize the Southern Connecticut State University Jazz Trio, who performed at the last board meeting throughout lunch. It's so interesting. I was so impressed with them. I did make a phone call, and David Siobhan, who was the professor of music there, and students Andrew Alvin and Mason Pugh joined us at our chamber's annual January open house. And I must say it was the hit of the evening. So if any of you are looking for musicians, they're up for grabs and they're fabulous. Now to President Chang for your comments, President Chang.
Thank you so much, Chair Ryan. Thanks to all the regents, all our presidents, all our student regents, ex officios for being here as always. So I want to start by recognizing recent events that have taken place outside of Connecticut. Excuse me. 2 days ago, a gunman took the lives of 3 young people at Michigan State University and injured 5 others. This senseless act of murder has robbed families of their loved ones and their futures and has deeply wounded the Spartan community. It's hurtful to all of us in higher education, but everywhere, especially when our learning communities are violated by this kind of tragedy. Across America, we generally have open campuses. We have security, we have partnerships with law enforcement, but for the most part, campuses in America are open. And our students, the faculty, the staff, we should feel safe in the places that we study and that we work. It's a travesty that more and more we don't feel safe. My condolences go out to the families in Michigan. As community advocates across the state of Connecticut, we're going to continue to work with legislators and local leaders to support all the work that happens across our state that hopefully will reduce gun violence and hopefully avoid future tragedies like this. Thousands of miles away, we're watching a different kind of tragedy unfold. The earthquake in Turkey and Syria has had an unthinkable human toll. It's beyond shocking. And I'm so sad for what I've read and what I've seen. To those of you who are from or you have loved ones in that region, please know that we're thinking about you when we share in that grief and that concern. When enormous, painful things like this happen, it makes us feel helpless. But in our own small way, if and when the time comes and our system and our institutions can be of assistance to those who have been impacted by this tragedy, we're going to do our best to help and to support. Finally, I want to recognize that next week, February 24th, will be the 1-year anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers on both sides have been killed, along with thousands of Ukrainian civilian casualties. It is a sad, sobering anniversary, and we can only pray that the conflict comes to an end soon. So all of this, for me, is a reminder of how fragile life is and can be, and how much we have, and how much we should cherish all of our opportunities. In light of greater global events, I appreciate even more the small moments on days like yesterday when the CSCU system as a whole was able to stand together at the Capitol. Our administration testified in front of the Appropriations Committee, and we were backed by our presidents and our faculty, staff, and union leaders. Later that night, we heard from 20 of our students on panels who testified about the value of their institutions and experiences. That was followed by more than 50 public commenters, which represented more than half of the public commenters in that public forum. And they stayed late into the night to let the legislature know that our system does incredible work every single day and deserves the highest levels of support. So I want to take a moment to personally thank Louise Williams and John Connor of AAUP, Seth Freeman and Kalina Sasanker of the Four Cs, Greg Carrar of SWOF, and all of our bargaining unit leaders and members who helped to organize and represent their institutions and their constituencies. They did so with professionalism, dignity, and sophistication. Most importantly, though, I want to thank our students. Your voices rang with such integrity and honesty. Your stories and words landed with incredible impact. I was watching the reactions in the room of the legislators, and what you said hit home. So when we get there, at the end of this legislative session, I want you to know that you will have made an enormous difference. Before the presentation on CSCU 2030, I want to especially thank Luis Sanchez, a student at Northwest Connecticut Community College and also one of our student regents. He testified on a panel, an immigrant from Ecuador. He is dismantling the stigmas around community college and he's charting his own path. He's going to transfer to one of our CSUs, his own words, not my pressure. And I know our CSU presidents are going to be more than happy to compete for him. I want to thank Rakeem Grant, another student from Southern Connecticut State University. He testified during public forum, and he literally had the hard copy of his testimony taken from his hands by committee chair Representative Tony Walker because she so appreciated what he had to say. And finally, I want to thank Lysandra Hernandez, a student at Charter Oak State College. Her story moved the room to tears. It is not because of a tragedy, but because of her honesty and her appreciation, her sacrifice, and the dedication to make life better for her daughters and her family. So they and all of our students were absolutely incredible. They remind us why we do what we do. It's not at a flagship, and it's not at a private. They are the reasons we fight the good fight here in public, regional, higher education, and for CSCU. So that concludes my remarks for now. Thank you, Chair Ryan. I will pause if there are any questions before we go into the presentation. Going once, going twice, although I think that's Pam or Chair Ryan's job, but either way. Okay, well, thank you again for the opportunity to give some remarks. I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to walk through CSCU 2030. This is a plan that we have been working on for a long time that we released publicly back in January. We have now had a chance to socialize this with legislators, with community leaders, industry leaders across the state. It is something we believe deeply in. We want to make sure that the regents hear certain things from us so that you all have full understanding and that the public understands it as well. So I'll dive right in. Obviously, we are the largest system of public higher education, actually, in the entire state. We're serving over 85,000 students, both credit and non-credit, and we have an enormous economic impact on the state. And we pride ourselves on being that engine of social mobility, the primary engine for social mobility and workforce development. And that means that you come to us and we help make students' lives better, period, full stop. These are our institutions. As you can see, we have, let's slow down just a little. There you go. Thank you. We want to make sure folks understand because the system, is only 11 years old. Right. And I think each institution still has its own brand identity to some degree. And we want to make sure that folks know that our system is here to support all of these institutions and that we take great pride in the work that they do because they are the ones that really comprise who we are. Next slide. So the CSCU 2030 plan, there's a vision behind this. It is big. It is bold. It is audacious. It is ambitious. Since I started this position over 18 months ago, the board has asked me to work on a vision and a plan. Constituents have asked me, faculty and staff have asked me, the legislators have asked. They said, what are you thinking about the CSCU system? And so the team and I, that includes our presidents, that includes our system office, we've done a lot of hard thinking and we feel like this is the right way to go. We need to do something that really disrupts the status quo and changes the game for what public higher education can and should be, because that's what the state deserves and that's what our students, our faculty, and our staff deserve. Next slide. So how did we get here? First, it's important to state that the legislature has technically increased our budget, but ultimately the increases to our budget have gone to rising fringe costs and unfunded legacy pension liability. I think I got that mostly right. but especially those of you with experience know what I'm talking about here in the state. And that has caused essentially a flattening of our operational budget for the system, for the entire system. When you compound that by CBAC obligations as well as inflation, our operating budgets have been incredibly compressed and strained, and that hasn't allowed us to really invest in the system, in faculty and academic programs, in student support and infrastructure the way we should. There was an article that came out in the Chronicle of Higher Education yesterday comparing the funding of state flagships to their public regional systems. And ultimately, the flagships, for better or for worse, I'll just say, are doing fine and have received, considerable funding, whereas the public regional systems have not. And I'll paraphrase the quote from the article, which says, "How are we supposed to attract students to institutions that have been hollowed out?" Right? And I think that is what we are really fighting against. We do not want a system that is hollowed out. And so we are arguing for greater resources to make sure that we bolster what it is that we do. Next slide. So you can see here, this is just a chart that shows the funding of our system. So in the dark blue, you can see our operating budget. In the gray, you can see the fringe benefit support. And then in the dark gray, you can see the emergency funding that we received during the COVID pandemic. But if you follow the kind of trajectory of the dark blue, you can see that essentially since fiscal year 2007, our operating budget has more or less been the same with a little bit of ebb and flow. Next slide. So the other piece of this is infrastructure, capital projects. We completed the CSU 2020 plan. That was a plan of about $1.3 billion in capital projects. All of those funds have now been utilized. That said, the completion of that program comes at a time when we have many buildings, many projects that need to still be addressed because our infrastructure in so many different places across every campus is at a point of, it needs to be fixed, right? We've got some places that are literally being held together by pieces, and it's not appropriate for our students. It's not appropriate for our faculty and staff. We have to have working environments and learning environments that are appropriate for their long-term success. Next slide. So to meet these challenges, first, to create a vision for what 21st century public higher education should be, and to concurrently meet these challenges, this is the plan that we've put forward. We want to increase the amount of funding that we receive for our operating budgets, and we want to address our capital situation as well. By doing so, we believe that we can transform public regional higher education for Connecticut and create new paradigms for how we execute our mission and really get to the vision that we think is best for the state. Next slide. So I'm going to ask Ben Barnes, our Vice President for Finance and Administration, to walk us through the next few slides.
Thank you for that, President Chang. Can you hear me okay? I'm in a new room. I'm gonna make sure it works.
You're good.
So the appropriations package that you see there on the screen shows what we're recommending for what we're receiving in the current fiscal year, fiscal 23, and what our recommendations are for fiscal 24 and 25. We've identified this is part of presented it in this form. This is in the format that the Appropriations Committee uses to appropriate to us. So it is broken out in the lines of appropriation that they normally use. As you can see, we're recommending an appropriation of not including fringe benefits of $640 million in the first year, and $713 million in the second year, and that those numbers are include the whole range of activities, not including obviously the capital spending is separate, but they include not only funding to support our ongoing operations to make sure that we have enough resources to pay for our bills and our meet payroll and all that. It also includes, as you can see down in the packed row in the lower level, about 80 or 90 million, 80 million in the first year and closer to 100 million in the second year of funding for the financial aid expansion. That's the largest sort of area of expansion in our proposal. It also includes additional supports for money for student supports. We've included in the overall ask in the respective block grants about 16 million growing over time each year for both the community colleges and for the university system for additional student supports for mental health, for advisement, for other wraparound services to help students. And there's also some funding in each year, a relatively small amount to support, I mean, relative to the overall ask for expanding academic programs. So funding to support the startup of new academic programs, which we think meet student needs and will help be a critical part of our enrollment strategy. So those are the major components of change. It's both funding to get us where we need to be to meet our bills, funding for student supports, funding for financial aid, and funding for academic program expansions. Those are the main components. But by and large, most of it is the money that we need. The lion's share of our ask is funding that we need in order to continue to support all of our institutions and to continue to support a full complement of faculty and staff.
Great, let's go to the next slide. So I'll just speak a little bit more about this. Ben mentioned most of it. I think a big part of this as well is what we would call PACT Plus, or an expansion of PACT. PACT is our very successful, free community college program that was created by the legislature a few years back. Currently about 10,000 students benefit from PACT, and what we're proposing would more than double that number of students who would have debt-free community college. So far, I think the reception in the legislature has been positive to this idea, so we look forward to carrying on that conversation. Ben mentioned the student supports and wraparound services. We know that our students they're not stopping their college and higher education journeys because of intellect or acumen or capability, talent, or ability. They stop because their lives force them to stop. And so with more student wraparound services to treat the whole student in a holistic way, ubiquitously across the system in multiple areas, we believe that we are going to enhance retention and we are going to have students succeed at an even higher level. And then, of course, there's academic innovation, workforce development. We're seeing and hearing, feeling, learning even more about where we are with the workforce these days. The needs in healthcare aren't going to go away. The needs in technology aren't going to go away. We need to mount even more programs and strengthen existing programs that are going to help us meet the skills gap and the workforce openings that we have across the state. But it is also going to help us enhance partnerships with the State Department of Education to do a variety of things that will make more of their students become our students. So we think it's a very exciting 3 pillars that capture a lot of what we think we can do with CSU 2030. Next slide. Let's talk about the finance package. Ben, I will kick this back over to you for some of the fine details.
We have put together a 7-year, we actually maintain a 10-year capital improvement program that includes all the projects that we need to do, both individual projects, such as the, Wheaton and Snow addition and renovation at Middlesex, as an example. A discrete building where we're renovating, adding an addition, changing the use, what have you. And then we also have program funding. And the major programs we have are information technology, infrastructure maintenance, and equipment And we have those for both the universities and the colleges. And those provide us funding for smaller projects that we need in order to maintain a state of good repair of those various systems. So between we have a multi-year program for those that averages about $200 million a year in each of the years. So there's variation in that as the projects are laddered into the schedule. This is the same set of program priorities that we've been maintaining and updating for several years. We've seen significant lack of progress moving through those. So many of the items that are in year one were also in year one in 2020 and have been sort of continually pushed out because we have not achieved funding. What we're proposing is that the state embark on a sort of an extension of our 2020 program that allows us to have a multi-year capital project commitment and gives the Board of Regents the necessary flexibility to, move around from project to project. Obviously, when you get a few years out, costs change, priorities change, and the specifics of each project become more clear as you go through design and evaluation. But we are very committed and have proposed specific legislation that we're continuing to discuss with legislators that would create that multi-year mechanism. There are a few different ways to do that, and there are different approaches that we would find acceptable, and we're working to identify the approach that the legislature is willing to accept. There are plenty of examples of this. I mean, the University of Connecticut has been enjoying multi-year funding programs. I think they've had 3 separate multi-year funding programs to my knowledge. There also are multi-year funding programs for a variety of other items, like there's a mortgage assistance program that was funded on a multi-year basis. There's funding commitment for the Connecticut Convention Center going back to the John Rowland period. There's a multi-year funding stream for, actually the governor proposed a multi-year funding stream for the baby bonds program as part of his budget this year. So we're not the only ones seeking a multi-year funding approach, but we are, I would argue, the largest and most consequential of the uses of that, given the size of our footprint and the scale of our physical plant. We've been I'll throw this out there. We recently did an evaluation of the average age of all of our facilities. The average age, if you take a square foot of our space someplace, the average age of that is, I believe, just over 20 years. So if 20 years is the average, there are definitely some spaces out there that are well older than that. And so we have an enormous challenge to maintain a state of good repair for all of our facilities, particularly our student-facing facilities. And so we think this is the approach, and we are working through the process. We have, I think, we're likely to get support from the Office of the State Treasurer, with whom we've been having some discussions. And we've also introduced, a bill has been introduced, a general statement of purpose bill in the Finance Committee that we hope we will be able to amend to include our multi-year funding language.
Thanks, Ben. I'll just add a couple pieces to this real quick. A few of the projects that we would be eyeing would be a new facility for Capital Community College. Okay, Capital Community College is in the capital of the state. It has been wedged into an old department store building. It is falling apart in certain places. I'm speaking very bluntly because it's the truth. This is not appropriate for any of our students, but in particular, Capital Community College serves students from some of the most socioeconomically challenged communities and zip codes in our state. To us, these infrastructure projects and investments are part of our mission and commitment to equity. What are we telling Black and Brown students and BIPOC students across Connecticut when the facilities that we give them are blatantly and egregiously subpar? We cannot allow that to happen. That would be an absolute dereliction of duty. Another example is the beginning of this academic year, there was a situation at Western Connecticut State University where in one of their primary residence halls, the air conditioning unit just died. The air conditioning unit died for a building that serves about 300 residential students during a heat wave. And interim President Barron leapt into action, found the resources, and ultimately found a short-term solution. But the reason that system died was because we had not maintained it. That's not a Western didn't maintain it. That's we as a system did not maintain that. We did not give the resources. We did not have or give the resources to Western to do that. The science building at Central Connecticut State University, for an institution that has such outstanding engineering, life science, computer science, programs, those students need the sciences to be taught in top-notch 21st century accommodations, and they do not have that. And that is, again, incumbent upon us to make sure that we are addressing those needs, and we need the state's support to do that. The last thing I'm going to say real quick is that the delays, and Ben, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the delays in some of our projects actually have driven the costs up across these projects that we've noted by almost $32 million. So without those mechanisms that allow us to work and act with alacrity, we are going to continue to cost more and more for these projects, and we will continue to suffer and lag behind in the way we serve our students. So let's go to the next slide. Ben, why don't you talk us through a little bit of this quickly?
Okay, sure. This is the 7-year total of our projects by category. As you can see, the first 4 lines are our program funding. So we have the 2 large technology and infrastructure. Those are used to support our information IT technology infrastructure, as well as driveways, roofs, utility systems, the sort of minor investments that we need to make. We have some money for advanced manufacturing and green energy. These are areas that we've been steadily investing in for years. I'm very proud of our accomplishments in both of those areas, but we're continuing to have funds available to invest there. And then the replacement, renovation, new construction, other than capital, and there may be like minor, like in the example I gave before in Middlesex, where there's a small addition as part of a renovation of an existing building to connect to, create a connection between two properties, adjoining properties. Other than small additions or the new community college campus we're proposing, all of these projects are renovations or replacement of existing building. We're not looking to expand our footprint. And in fact, in many cases, the renovations are, we're going through all of our existing plans for buildings and reviewing whether the change in our enrollment and the change in the modality of our classes and the change in student preferences should require us to revisit the specifics of some of those projects. But these are based on the age and condition of our existing facilities, scheduling in the renovation of those in order to maintain a state of good repair for all of our facilities. So while it includes new construction on that list, I don't want anybody thinking that this is a $1.5 billion of expansion. This is $1.5 billion of maintaining our existing facilities in a state of reasonable repair and a new campus for Capital Community College. The total cost of the community college campus for Capital in our plan is approximately $350 million. So you can see it's a big piece, but there's more than $1 billion in major renovations for Middlesex. The ones that are most highest on our list, obviously, are Middlesex, as Nuntuck, Northwestern Community College. There's a project at Naugatuck Valley. So we have a number of significant aging buildings that are in urgent need of repair, and those are all included in those renovation numbers.
Thank you, Ben. So I think that takes us to the end. Tried to be succinct about it. Sorry if it ran a little longer than I had hoped. But we're happy to take your comments, your questions, your concerns. Again, I'll just say that our engagement with the legislature and with others so far on the plan, I think has been generally positive. They're happy that we've put forth a set of ideas at a time when there is an intense conversation going on about the funding of public higher education in our state and across the country. We feel very good about the fact that we are putting forth a very strong and detailed vision that allows us to be a catalyst for not just change, but for creating solutions, right? It's really important that everyone knows that we are doing everything we can to not just be recipients, but we want to be co-authors of solutions. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. And let's please get any comments or feedback from our regents.
Thank you, President Chang. Does anyone have any questions or comments or remarks for President Chang? If none, we will now, I'd like to,
Rick
Sorry,
Forth and David Blitz. Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. Thanks. The show that, or the presence that we had yesterday at the Capitol was really impressive at the LOB, and I too am grateful for all the people who were there, and especially the faculty and students. President Cheng, you mentioned how the Probst co-chair was so impressed with testimony that she asked for a copy of it. Can anyone speak to how did we do, and is it possible to sort of predict how this may play out over time, and whether there are other things we could be doing during the balance of this session to help out with this?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Regent Porth. I think we did well. I mean, but I'm a little biased, obviously, but I think, Ben and I, with the support of all our folks, who have helped to create and author this plan and who were there physically and virtually to provide support, we made our case. We answered the questions. We're going to have a really robust conversation in subcommittee and other conversations moving forward. Again, I think we're in a good position because we are not saying that we quote unquote deserve more. Of course we deserve more, right? Of course we've shown that we've been underfunded, but what we're being very progressive about is our approach in saying, let's be proactive in designing and creating the solutions together. And I think that is going to set us apart. I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you that we were going to land at a certain place, but all I can say is that the process so far has been a positive one, and we're going to just continue to be very transparent and very forthright with what we think is the pathway forward. I don't know if Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
Success with the CSCU 2030 program. But I also appreciate that there's a lot of distance between now and then. I also, my experience is that success comes through compromise and accommodation of other views. So that success, exactly how it looks, is still up in the air, but I feel very positive about the response that we've gotten. I was looking over the questions and sort of going through the process. We now go to a subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, and we have a long and growing list of specific data items that they want to look at. And I think that we're going to be able to provide that information, and the nature of their questions suggests that they are in favor of supporting us. The real limitation is the whole series of guardrails that have been placed on the state budget around spending caps and related items that do limit the ability of the state to fund everything that they might actually be able to afford. But I continue to think that the folks in the legislature are looking creatively at how to meet all their needs, including ours. So I'm very optimistic that we're going to get a good result.
And I'll just add, Regent Porth, that, you know, our vision, our plan is a 7-year plan. Appropriations only works in 2-year, biennial budgets, right? So our goal is to be having this conversation for the long term. The goal would be to have our block grant permanently adjusted, and to be able to move ahead that way. So, but you know, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and
Yep.
we're gonna be here for it. I believe that
Thank
Dr.
you. Thanks.
I believe, David, you had a question?
Well, it was more a comment, and I hope I can take just a few minutes to sort of explain how we plan to present this to the faculty at Faculty Advisory Committee. And so think of it as a kind of mini report on our part, focusing on the numbers in the CSU 2030 and also in the governor's plan, which would be of importance and interest to faculty. I think it important to recognize both the budgetary increase for CSCU proposed in the governor's budget, as well as the gap between that and the CSCU 2030 proposal. What follows, as I noted, is how this will be explained to the Faculty Advisory Committee, and I welcome any suggestions for improvements. I note the following increase included in the governor's proposed budget: the continuation of temporary operating support to the extent of 50% of FY23 federal COVID one-time funds for a total of $97.7 million in FY24, and 50% of that for 25% overall for FY25, or $48.8 million. Added to the FY23 general fund allocation of $317.8 million, that makes for a total of $415.5 million for FY24, though the governor's budget figure is slightly lower at $414.8. However, that is considerably less than the $543.1 million proposed in CSU 2030, a difference of $128.3 million. Perusing the 311-page document for references to CSU, I note the following proposed new budget commitments. 1, $6.5 million for Guided Pathways Advisors, which up to now have been funded only from one-time federal emergency funds. 2, $15 million for PACT, for a significant increase over previous funding and making that funding permanent. And 3, a $4 million increase in the Roberta Willis Scholarship for a 12% increase, including a $15 million reallocation of unexpended monies from that fund for CSCU. Though I note that the scholarship fund is not just for CSCU and that there are significant problems in how it can be accessed. There are 3 areas that need further elucidation, in my view. 1, the governor's budget clearly indicates support for CBAC wage increases, but it isn't clear to me how the $40.2 million for FY24 and the $45.5 million for FY25 CSU components is factored into the respective budget years. Secondly, the issue of funding for fringe benefits remains unclear to me and perhaps to you. The slogan of a revenue neutral policy, shifting from state funding for all fringes for some employees to state funding for some fringes for all employees, needs to be elucidated, especially as concerns expectations for future years as fringes increase more rapidly than budget allocations. 3, the governor's budget proposes only an $8.6 million budget increase from FY24 to 25, or just over 2%, which is clearly inadequate, even to take into account inflation. I note that the staff in the governor's office who prepared the proposal focus on 3 aspects of CSCU. 1, the 29% decline from 89,000 full-time part-time headcount in FY14-15 to 64,000 in FY22 to 23. 2, the increase of unrestricted reserves from FY20 to FY2022 of $33 million to $100 million for the community college system, and from $126 million to $201 million for the university system. And 3, the shift from a 49% share of CSCU students overall in the state in fall of 03 to a comparable percentage now for the privates in fall of 2021. Evidently, this plays into their thinking on the scope and the extent of budget needs for our system. That said, it is unfortunate that the governor's budget, despite its proposed increases, remains far from the objective stated in CSCU 2030. We can only hope that the legislature acts to significantly decrease that gap, taking into account measures other than headcount, budget reserves, and public-private ratios. In particular, we have the high return on investment afforded by public higher education, as stressed by President Chang in his statement to the Legislative Appropriations Committee, and the value added by our system for college and university graduates who become not only productive workers in the state economy, but just as importantly, constructive members of our Connecticut society, as evidenced by further testimony of students and faculty referred to so eloquently today. I know that Governor Lamont appreciates the importance of public higher education in the state, having served for over a decade as a distinguished faculty member at my university, during which time he organized many dozens of presentations, panels, and debates on public policy and peace studies. For our part, we need to recognize his priorities as he has stated them: to balance the budget without accounting maneuvers, pay down the accumulated pension debt to reduce the burden on future generations, maintain and increase the rainy day fund in expectation of difficult days ahead, provide income tax relief, especially for the less wealthy, and increase funding for early childhood care. We can significantly help by meeting the needs of business and society for qualified college and university graduates. It's my hope and expectation that he will support increased funding for CSCU beyond his office's current proposal, as CSCU makes more explicit its 2030 proposal and provides additional needed details of priority projects. Thank you. I'll provide a copy of this to the secretary for the
Thank
minutes.
you, David.
Thank you, David. So I think, Ben, do I see your hand up over there? Do you want to respond to a couple things, or does Regent Balducci?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, I was going to make a comment, and I think I will do that. This sounds like the proper time. Before the governor's address last week, I'd been thinking about stalemate between the Board of Regents and the unions, and that's not a good place to be. Last week, the governor put forth a challenging budget for higher education. We all know that. We've been reading about it, et cetera, et cetera. What I would like to see for the first time really is a united front by our unions, the Board of Regents, faculty, staff, and students. That's to make a positive case that our needs are needed, and make that case to the governor. Governor Lamont has been supportive of higher education, particularly our system over the years, and I'm sure he'd like to continue in that direction. We need to make a united effort for our needs. This things have begun to change, I think, in a positive sense between the board, the unions, faculty, and staff. Hopefully it'll continue. I served 20 years in the legislature. One thing I learned there, when you've got people divided, little or nothing happens. When you get a united front, only positive things can happen. However, when there is a collaborative, as I just said, we can make a positive effort to the governor and to the legislature. We need to work together on our goals for higher education. And when they see that there is a positive front, I think we're in a good position. We have the opportunity to show the public, but more importantly, especially our students, that the board and the unions are working together for the first time in a solid effort to make our case to the governor and to the legislature together, not separately, and we're headed in one direction. And it's like I used to tell my ball players, it's death by inches, by inches. You don't do the drill, we end up making mistakes. You don't do the physical conditioning, you end up making mistakes. Well, we've got two teams here, the board, faculty, staff, students, et cetera. And I think we make a positive effort and do this in one fell swoop as a team moving forward, we may end up with what we're looking for in the end from the board, from the governor, and from the legislature. That's my comment on that.
Thank you, Regent Balducci. I just want to say real quick, I think if you had been in the testimony room last night, you would have been really thrilled because, folks were stepping up left, right, and center, and it was really moving and it was awesome. So I think we're definitely moving in that direction.
Thank you, President Chang. Is there anyone else who has any comments or thoughts? If none, we will, thank you very much. I'll now ask Dr. Pritchard and Pam Helene to manage the public comment portion of our meeting.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ryan.
Pam has joined us, so she's in if you want to explain, and she's good to go.
Okay, super. As we have no written comments received for this month prior to the board meeting, we'll move directly to our 2 student comments. Our first presenter is Samantha, and I apologize if I mispronounced your last name, Desronville, and she is a student from Central Connecticut State University. Sam, are you there?
Yes, can you see me?
Second. There
Yes,
you
go ahead,
are.
Sam.
We can only, not your full head. Can you tilt your camera just a smidgen up? And perfect, perfect. There you are. Have your 3 minutes?
Yes, sorry, let me just make sure. Can you see me?
I can. Oops, there you go.
Okay, sorry, I have to move offices.
Okay, you ready? Your 3 minutes may begin.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, CSU Board of Regents. My name is Samantha Desronville. I am a political science and sociology major at Central Connecticut State University. I am the chairperson of the Academic Affairs Committee for the CCSU Student Government Association. I have lived in Connecticut my whole life, and I have only attended Connecticut State colleges like Norwalk Community College. Connecticut has a surplus, and especially for my community, has only served to keep us alive during the pandemic. Unemployment is the only way families like mine survive the financial hardship. I can only encourage you to push this proposal to pass for students like me. For people like me, I am a first-generation undergrad student, cancer survivor, and I am from an immigrant family. Education changes lives. The cycle of poverty is well known where I am from, and higher education is not made affordable to individuals like me. Growing up, I've heard how education is a privilege for the wealthy, yet my mom taught me that education was the key to a better life. She taught me about the cycle of poverty and how education leads to higher paying jobs, job security. It's so much easier to live in society, especially in America, with an education. Having financial security has been a dream in my home for as long as I can remember, the ability to live comfortably without government aid. This opportunity is a lifeline for people like me who come from poor Black families, immigrant families, poor white families, Muslim families, and even Asian American families. Like-minded people like me who would like to afford and expose our community to the real danger of not having an education and the weapon that education is in this economic war. I am fortunate to be able to obtain an education at a reasonable price because my mom could not afford any other institutions. I took 3 years to obtain my first bachelor's degree, and now I am having the opportunity this spring to graduate with 2 degrees. I would not be where I am today if not for the outstanding guide of my CCSU professors and mentors. This system is a gift to students like me, and my role in student government has really opened my eyes to how truly special the education experience is. Higher education has allowed me to interact with people from all different types of backgrounds, and I am confident that it has prepared me for this outside world. I'm asking you to continue to push for funding for higher education for little siblings like mine and siblings of people who come from communities like mine. Students like me who take full advantage of the system and have built a road for others and only hope that our siblings have the same opportunities. Again, I encourage you to continue to fight for students like me, and I will fight as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Zakai James. He is a student at Southern Connecticut State University. Zakai, can you check your audio and your video for me? There you are.
Hello.
Hello. Do you have your 3 minutes ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, your 3 minutes may begin.
Okay, so morning, everyone. My name's Zakai. I went to a school in Waterbury. In middle school, I was introduced to this program called Gear Up. Not exactly sure how it was pitched to me, but in high school, I really understood how big of an opportunity it was for me and people in my city. The scholarship covered tuition, So all I had to pay for was on-campus housing because I wanted the full college experience. I felt like I didn't have to worry as much about the cost of college as a lot of people do. So I was able to put my focus into like what skills I wanted to build. I feel like the cost of college is what deters a lot of people from even thinking about going. I came to Southern as a computer science major, and my first thought was like, yes, this is the major that's gonna make me the most money. And now after growth, I see that as a problem. We put so much focus into how much money something's gonna make, how much it's gonna cost to do something. And we worry about that because it potentially could follow us for the rest of our lives. I actually knew one of my friends, she's an art student, and she chose the path of a computer science major too, because same reason as me, is gonna make a lot of money. And she was so worried about that I don't know about now, but when I last talked to her, she didn't give up on art, but she didn't do what she wanted to do with it. So instead, I hope for a future that we can put more thought into what we want to do with our lives rather than how much it's going to cost. This spring, I'm graduating happily as a communication major. I have no doubt I'm in a better position than I would have been as a computer science major. I know what I want to do now. With more financial support and lower tuition, I think students would really be able to explore what they want to do with their lives and get to where they want to be. I truly do want to give back to the system that helped me going to college and everything. And that's what I plan to do when I get up there to success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes our public comments. President Chang.
President Chang.
Sorry.
I just wanted to say real quick, thank you so much to Zakai and to Samantha. Zakai, I think you testified last night, right?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. I thought I recognized you because another student, it must have been another student also mentioned Gear Up. But in any case, thank you and Samantha. And again, you're the reason, and you and your fellow students are the reason that we're here, right? And why we do what we do, and that's why we're gonna keep fighting as you've implored us to do. We work for you, so we're gonna go get it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, President Chang, and thank you, Alice and Pam, but also Samantha and Zakai. Your remarks are very moving, and it makes us happy to be here because of what you're saying. So thank you. Next, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the minutes from the December 15th board meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any changes or corrections?
I believe both Professor Sasanker and Professor Blitz have their hands up on the minutes.
Oh, okay, Professor Sasanker?
Thank you. So I want to note that Union President Seth Freeman's testimony has been removed, or his public comment has been removed. Its subject was not noted, and his comments were characterized as fraudulent. And I want to draw, pardon?
Excuse me, Professor Sanker, that was an error on my part. General Counsel Ernestine Weaver made a correction, and the corrected minutes have been posted.
Okay. Let me speak, though, to that initial issue, because I want to draw attention to the fact that what he was commenting on are inadequacies in our shared services that are so severe that they could be reasonably interpreted as malicious. And that's what happened last time. And he was elected by well over 3,000 of your employees in this system. So just the tendency to go in that. So are his comments included now in the minutes?
I am verifying that right now. Hold on.
Okay, because I did not see them as of this morning. It's a silencing of all of us, and it feels like a confirmation of the level of regard that we have felt in the system. And the discrepancy between the standards that we are used to and the standards that our CSU colleagues can still rely upon is stark. There's this apparently unreasonable privileged assumption that we will be paid correctly, paid on time, given a schedule of when to expect payments for special contracts, that we will process contracts in time to meet class begin dates, that we would reliably process students' workers in time so that they can get paid during the semester that they work. And it's my understanding that President Maduko immediately addressed the situation that President Freeman was addressing at the last meeting. And we're very grateful for that. But the community colleges have been living in the slums of this system for some time. And shared services was the least objectionable part of the consolidation plan. In fact, there was no in principle objection to it. But it's a poor bellwether of whether or not we can pull off this ambitious transition. And your faculty and staff have been warning you about it for years. I mean, one colleague of mine was paid the wrong amount, or not at all, 11 times in the last year and a half. And when we are overpaid, my colleagues have been known to receive emails demanding the overpayment back immediately, even though that demand conflicts with our contract. It's not fun here. And we've been working double time to survive the dismantling and the rebuilding of our institutions under our feet while dealing with a pandemic, new everything, processes, courses, everything. And threats that we might not be eligible to teach at all if we don't take some training course on teaching online with content from 2012 and learning theories that have since been discredited, and then we don't. When students are thrown fully into the centralized system, how many more will we hurt and how many will we lose in the process? Will they be here telling you about it, and will you listen? Is my question, right? And what I worry about is that they won't be here. They won't scream about it, because the majority of our students are first-gen students. And what that means is that they've already been subjected to under-resourced school systems. Often the biggest hurdle is believing that they belong here, that they deserve this education, that they're not frauds. They might not even know that they deserve better, or that when they get lost in the system, that it's not their fault. So I want to be clear that we're going to keep speaking up. We're going to keep speaking up on their behalf. And I suggest that we reflect on Du Bois's observations on what it means to be problem people. The people who speak up are not the problem. The problems are the problems. And you'll notice that we were there with you yesterday. We truly believe in the system. We weren't just there. We brought community partners with us to speak up on behalf of the system. But we have to be responsible. And if we don't have the resources to make sure that we can address the problems when we see them, then there's real concern, right? And we bring it to the regions. Why? Because there's no other avenue of communication. This is what we were talking about when we said there are issues with shared governance. We don't have a Senate yet. We've elected people, but we now have to get, it's not functional yet, right? We haven't elected chairs, we haven't put together bylaws, etc. So understand this, on the ground, it's way more complicated than you thought. And when you hear reactions like that, it reflects something real. And I don't think our expectations are unreasonable. And I have higher expectations for what we're gonna provide our students. So that's what I have to say. Thank you. I'm very glad if you have returned Seth Freeman's comments to the minutes and also removed the accusation that they were fraudulent.
Professor Sasanker, his written statements were forwarded to the full board on December 14th at 3:50 p.m. His recording was part of the permanent record. His written statements were not, and I will make an amendment to include them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blitz.
Thank you. It follows up on the comments by Professor Sasanker. But first, I wish to thank the Secretary of the Board for including the written statement of my comment on the CSCU strategic vision and in particular the term systemness, as well as systems of systems, as attachment E, page 27 of today's agenda. I note the high quality of the minutes, which allow us not only to review the resolutions as approved, but also the debate and discussion at the meeting. That said, I also want to refer to the previously highlighted yellow and red text on page 5 concerning the public comment by Seth Freeman, chairman of the 4 Cs, and referring to the response by CSCU General Counsel Weaver. As that response was not part of the December meeting as recorded in these minutes, perhaps it would be better to include it as an attachment to the minutes of today's meeting. But that technicality aside, I have a further comment as to tone and terminology. Unlike all the other public comments briefly noted on page 5, no topic is provided to summarize Mr. Freeman's statement. I think it would be better to remove the unnecessary highlighting. Hopefully that's already been done. Remove the term fraudulent, which I understand has been done as well. Indicate the topic as significant pay issues, and then with an appropriate asterisk, refer the reader to attachment C as a clarification and criticism of the public comment in question. That suggestion, and it is merely a suggestion for you, as you well know that I'm merely an ex officio non-voting, though hopefully constructive member of the board, would reduce the temperature and use more appropriate terminology. The public comment period is an essential part of our board meetings and indicates its openness to criticism on its full range of activities. I myself, before acceding to my current slightly more elevated status, availed myself of the opportunity to comment on a number of occasions. That is an important tradition to maintain. In this context, I recall the 3 Cs advanced some time ago at my home university during a period of considerable dispute. The need to make our comments, criticisms, and responses in the context of civility, collegiality, and community, which are 3 key components of the culture appropriate to public higher education. I try to maintain those standards and recommend them to others as well, as a means of framing our disagreements and even occasional conflicts in a way conducive to resolving those differences in a constructive manner, which I address not only to the members of this board, but to Mr. Seth Freeman as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we need to move to accept the motion or the amendments, or I'm not sure. I think I need a little technical support here. If this is, if we are making a change to those minutes, or if we are referring to the minutes that you recently sent to us, Pam.
Chair Ryan will need a motion to amend the minutes for December 15th to replace Professor Freeman's written comments, and then a motion and a second to accept the amended minutes.
All right, so let's do the first motion, please. May I have a motion to accept the changes as presented?
So moved.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Now we'll call for, do we need a call for the vote for the change in the motion?
Yes,
Yes.
for the amended
The amended
minutes,
motion.
yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'd like to call for that motion for the amended minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any objections or comments? If not, we'll come to immediate vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. We now have the approval of the agenda. We are, next, we're going to call on our committee chairs for their reports. First.
Excuse me, Chair, we need consent agenda before that.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. We need the approval of I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The consent agenda is approved. Next, we're going to call on our committee reports for their, the committee chairs for their reports. Ira Bloom, Chair, We welcome your report from the Academic and Student Affairs Committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. The ASA committee met on February 3rd of this month. Committee members present included Regents Howry, James, McCarthy, Porth, Chair Bloom, and Professor Kalina Sasanker. The ASA committee appreciates and thanks the board for its approval of the consent agenda items brought forward by the committee. The new programs and the modifications of existing programs in this package address the important goals of improving the student experience and opportunities for CSU staff, consistent with President Chang's comments about academic innovation and workforce development. First, at Southern, the consolidation of the undergraduate mathematics programs into a single BS in mathematics with 4 options or tracks emanating from a unified core of math courses. So this includes, as you'll see on the agenda, both the discontinuations and new program approvals. The consequence of this is the single BS in mathematics with 4 options. Students, after completing the unified core of math courses, will be able to opt into any one of the 4 options, which includes applied math, pure math, math education 7 to 12, and a new concentration in statistics, which is important. At Central's AHCSB accredited School of Business, which is worth noting. It's a very important accreditation for business schools. A new BS program in business was approved. It's a more generous business degree added to the school's 5 specialized degrees programs, which include accounting, finance, financial management, MIS, and marketing. It is expected to have broad appeal to students interested in general business programs and presents fewer hurdles for transfer students coming from the community colleges and for working adults and non-traditional students seeking to upskill or reskill to meet new changing workforce demands. I really don't like the words upskill or reskill, but I think the understanding is, it will our people the opportunity to learn have new abilities and to move forward. And third, at Western, the introduction of a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theater program, which will draw in students who seek specialized instruction and a more professional degree leading to a career in theater. And the new Bachelor of Arts program in Popular Music degree will allow the Department of Music to serve a new population of students and increase access to study of the arts in higher education for those who have had limited formal pre-college musical training. In other words, it's expected to appeal to a broad group of students interested in studying music who are coming in without formal musical training and without need for an audition. I'm tempted to, I'd like to make an additional comment referring to Zaki's comment earlier regarding people's aspirations to earn more money and the programs that they select initially. I'm reminded, and President Nunez may remember this person, the longtime dean of the School of Engineering at CUNY at CCNY, Egon Brenner, used to meet with the incoming freshman engineering students each year. And he would say to them, if you're here to make money, leave. If you're here because you want to study engineering, stay. And I think, in a sense, that captures the comments that Zaki made. Dr. Brenner went on to become the Deputy Chancellor of the City University and unfortunately has left for the University in the Sky, great university, but he's a close friend of mine. But I think his comment really touches on what Zaki had said. And we hope that we present these opportunities to the students. And I think some of the program approaches we have today from the 3 campuses the way they're structured leave more ability for students to make choices as they move along, as opposed to simply choices when they first enter the university without the benefit of being exposed to other opportunities. In any event, thank you. And again, I thank the board for its approval of the committee's recommendations.
Thank you, Regent Bloom. Does anyone have any questions for Regent Bloom? Excuse me. We are now moving on. The Audit Committee Chair, Elise Wright, has no report today. Committee Chair Rich Balducci, we welcome your report from the Finance and Infrastructure Committee.
Glad you're welcoming my report because it's going to be brief today. Finance Committee met on the 8th, and we had 2 action items. Both of them are on the consent agenda, dealing with an easement to Norwalk Community College, a small easement, and the other one's reallocation of funding for dollars that were there for Southern Connecticut State University. Gateway. Then discuss 2 major items I think that we should just take a quick look at. Gateway.
Central.
Thank you. Basically, Ben discussed providing an update on the Gateway Long Wharf site plan, which currently is underway in New Haven. And this is a positive thing. It's going to be the redevelopment of the area, and CSU is cooperating with the city based on our understanding that the redevelopment should accommodate the automotive education facilities that Gateway needs for its program. This apparently is a big program. It's grown. It's a positive thing. We've gotten donations for it over the years to help, and it's one that I think will benefit our students and certainly Gateway Community College. The other comment that he made, which is a little closer to home because it deals with fiscal matters. Finally, our midterm budget projections for CSCU. It showed the operating results for 2022 were positive for CSCU with an overall surplus of $53 million. And in the current year, fiscal 23 projects the surplus of $20 million, up from the $10 million before. And that's a very positive thing too. And how could you be complaining about that? The problem is we have to remember that those are one-shot dollars. They end at the end of fiscal year 2023. And after that, I've mentioned it before, Ben's mentioned it on several occasions. We're now looking down the barrel of $105 million shortfall in 24 and $115 or $16 million shortfall in 2025. Those are not positive things, and what we're going to have to do is going to somehow figure out how we continue having positive programs at the colleges and universities, keeping good faculty and staff, and continuing to have our students available to take the classes which are first class across not only this state, but I think. So with that, Madam Chairman, not the best note I'd like to end on, but positive for this year, for last year and for this year. That ends my report. And if there are any comments or questions, we'll be glad to take them.
Thank you, Regent Balducci. Does anybody have any comments or questions? I must say I do like the positive better than the other, but we will all be working together to make that positive continue. So thank you. We have no report from the Human Resource Committee, and we have no report from the Executive Committee. Therefore, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned, but thank you so much. And parents, thank you for your hard work and that of your colleagues and staff who are doing a great job representing all of us. Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Your live stream has ended.
Hey, everyone.